I want to share with you the paradox of restrainability, and I'm going to give a very specific example. And you might want to watch one of the other videos or read one of the articles that explain what the term restrainability is. So on the assumption that you know that and that we're not explaining that here, the paradox of restrainability is best shown in the example of a business or an organization that has a lot of meetings. And when you practice restrainability, you are not looking to timetable meetings that are too long. And what goes with that is that we tend to fill the time that's available, even if we don't actually need it. If we have a 2-hour meeting, we'll probably talk for 2 hours. It's very rare that people say, we've done our business in 20 minutes, so let's just finish. Can happen occasionally, but what tends to happen is the expression work fills the time available comes true. And so the danger of that is that we waste all kinds of things. We waste the time that we've got. We waste the words because we just fill the time with words. We tend to discuss just about everything. And that has led to the conclusion in organisations that are more restrained that we should actually set meetings to be shorter than we need. And that means that we'll sort of hurry up and get stuff done and be more efficient. And there's even a whole lot of practice around meetings standing up and corridor meetings, not even sitting down and getting too comfortable. Now that can actually be efficient, and it can deal with an organisational culture that tends to fill the time available or overfill the time available. It creates a culture of talking too much, of doing too much, of spinning stuff out. And when you practice restrainability, the obvious thing to do would be to cut down. But restrainability isn't a negative thing. It's not about kind of punishing ourselves for taking too long by then encouraging us to have meetings that are half an hour instead of an hour. That puts us back on a line of negativity, and negativity tends to be a low thing, a de-energizing thing, a demotivating thing, and tends to put people on the defensive. So a culture of restrainability looks at simply setting a meeting for what we need to do. And that's might sound like the same thing, but it's just a practice and an attitude of measure. Measure is that we get a sense of what we need. And when we get the measure wrong, we might think, oh, we wish we'd had a bit longer. And so with measure, what you might do is set a meeting for 20 minutes, and end the meeting after 20 minutes and have an agenda for 20 minutes, but also build a little possible time so nobody goes on to the next thing for 10 minutes. And it might be that you've just got time for a break or a bit of informality to catch up before your next meeting. Now you might think that that's inefficient too, but it's just part of practicing to get to measure. So you might want to build a little bit of slack in. And if you go for, we think we just need 20 minutes, I think I might just need this amount of milk in the jug for my tea, that nearby there's some milk in the fridge just to top it up, rather than overfilling and needing to do that negative thing and cutting down. But the paradox of that is if it becomes too much of a habit, if it becomes dogmatic, is that what we might need to do is be restrained in our restraint. And that's our paradox of restrainability. It's that if we always now have a habit that we do too little, is suddenly being lean turns into being mean. And we always seem to be having meetings that are too short. And that's as bad as having meetings that are too long. And then we can try and cram stuff into the time available, make poor decisions, speak faster, and we're not being restrained at all in that positive way. So at one level, restrainability is an attitude, a cultural behaviour of filling the milk jug from empty up until the level we need, rather than filling it up and then trying to pour stuff away later that we didn't need, often wasting. So the attitude is the right one. It's calm and it's relaxed, and it sets that meeting to say, well, we've got 5 agenda items, let's do half an hour, and that should be enough. And that's a sense that you get over time. It's a practice. It's about packing just what you need for a journey, rather than being in that mode of let's overpack for the worst scenario. What you can do is build in the idea that you pack just what you need, but available to you sort of in storage or nearby might be the extra that you need. So if you go camping, there's a shop that's in walking distance, and we don't overpack, but we can top up if we need to. And so in terms of meetings, we set a meeting for half an hour and we build in that little bit of slack later until we get it right, until we get used to it. But the paradox is some meetings need longer. Some meetings, our instinct says we just need to go into this in a lot of depth. We need to hear lots of different points of view. Things might arrive on this agenda because a lot's going on around us at the moment under any other business. And so rather than set the meeting for an hour, what we might do is set it for half an hour, but ask everybody to be available if it needs to go a bit longer. And that can be done occasionally. And so we restrain our restraint by not dogmatically every time saying it's going to be short just for the sake of it. But sometimes our instinct says we need to make it longer. And in some cases, by restraining our restraint, we say this is a whole morning. This is 2 hours. There's going to be stuff everybody wants to talk about. But also in restraint is checking in with each other and saying, how are we doing? And that check-in might say, what's our finish time? It might be half an hour shorter. But that needs to be open, it needs to be relaxed, and it needs to be about, in a group, taking a sense of measure about what we need that's just right. And then again, over time, if we do that, we get a better skill going, a better sense of measure, and then we tend to notice that our meetings are just the right length. So the first thing is about restrainability, is the ability to set a meeting length that feels just right and has a little bit, at least initially, of slack built in at the end that we might need to call upon, or a follow-up meeting, for example. But it also means that sometimes, if we notice just out of habit, we're almost forcing meetings to be too short for the content that needs to happen, is somebody needs to be able to speak up and say, no, let's set this one for an hour or an hour and a half because there's a lot to discuss. So restrainability has a paradox that sometimes we need to practice the skill of restraining being too restrained.